Hello, welcome to Quackalope. Thank you for joining us. Today we're bringing you a Kickstarter preview of
Oros by AZEK Games. This is such a fascinating little title. If you haven't heard of this one yet, we're so happy to bring some attention to this because it is so well deserved. This is...
Now, Jan,
yes.
Before we get into that, we should specify, because we're about to compliment this game a lot.
Oh, that this is a non-sponsored video.
No.
Well, it is sponsored by
This is a sponsored
Patreon.
video. Every month or so, because of the generous support from our community and the people over on Patreon, who not only get bonus content, they also get to help us bring some indie designers and titles to the table for you. That being said, Jan, do you want to do mechanics or flavor text first? Because we each have a role here.
Let's paint the world before, just like we would do any game, any actual game. We paint the world that we're going to play in, and then we describe what that world will be.
Give them 2 lines on what this is doing to hook their interest.
Sure. So this is a very innovative player, very heavy player interaction, Euro with action selection, light worker placement, and tile displacement.
I'd say it is worker placement, tile displacement, and action utility. Like it's an action, like your actions are your resources.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, it's just across the eternal expanse where sky and rock weave as one, the keeper of light and intelligence looked and saw many ancestors with minds of stone and stand. Upon the high place the wise one spoke. Upon the echoes 4 elements returned. The great waters that give, the fertile land that sustains, the raging fire that purifies, and the living sun that illuminates. Again the wise one spoke. Light fused with flesh, and these 4 were fashioned into the likeness of the ancestors. These 4 were given the mysteries of the mountains, and with this knowledge all element obeyed. These the wise one sent to the 4 corners, saying, Go down to the low places. Among the mines of stone and sand, find among them those who seek the presence of light and illumination, and who would penetrate the origins of knowledge and hold fast the wonderful mysteries. Hear now what wisdom is. Those who follow, call your own, assign and they will obey, form mountains and they will build, send and they will study. These few I make as I, full of luster, full of glory. Go down and ascend.
Such good. That's such beautiful writing.
Oh, it's
it really
so
is.
good.
We said this before, but it is fantastic. It's so fascinating.
It tells you nothing about the game, though, until you understand what's going on here.
Sure.
We are playing as demigods in a way, or more as worshippers of demigods, as this land shifts and kind of creates a cacophony upon itself. This is a globe in all sense, and if you imagine maybe a video game app with a globe of water popping into the center of the screen here, everything wraps around, and we start first through volcanic eruption coming up through the oceans and the waters, building and colliding land. Fast forwarding time so it smashes together, developing and building civilizations until finally mountain ranges stretch across this little blue planet, and we are able to erect shrines to the 4 different demigods available.
So mechanically, what Jesse is saying, the objective of the game is to reach a certain amount of knowledge points, which you will do by upgrading your tech tree or your abilities, by placing down shrines of worship or tiles on top of the map itself, and going up the ascension track. Endgame will trigger when one player reaches number 15 on the ascension track. Now, in terms of what you're doing every turn, you are taking 3 actions out of a multiplicity of actions that are available across your player board.
You have this bottom row here. The first row is going to allow you to shift tiles on the board. Let's go ahead and demonstrate how that would work.
So for example, if we are shifting this row of tiles here, every tile will move whatever spaces you deem are moving because you're able to upgrade that. And whatever tile exits the edge of the board will wrap around, just like that world that Jesse was painting, on the other side.
The second location allows you to move tiles. This is not the same as shift. Shift cycles an entire row or column. Move will crush them into each other. For instance, if I was to move this 4 into this 2, I would crush it, making a level 4 tile and spawning a level 2 volcano. The other important thing with move is going to be the opportunity to combine 2 tiles into a mountain. If we had 2 4s there and we smashed them together, they and only they, would become a mountain range where we could build shrines, and we'll get into that in a second. Our third action.
Erupt, or forming volcanoes, which is the act of creation. With this action, you are going to basically manipulate these monstrous elements and create land.
Tiles that smash into each other. If there's excess in terms of the rock, they'll create volcanoes. And then if you decide to trigger or erupt volcanoes, they'll either develop the tile underneath it. For instance, this one, if a 3 volcano exploded on it, would develop into a 4. Or this mountain, if the 2 volcano triggered, would pour over into the ocean side, doing an island valued at 2. Our next location is going to be Send. This is going to be where your worshippers go to either the feet or the shrines of the demigods.
And that is super important, because the entire conceit of the game is to gain knowledge. And the only way that you gain knowledge is by studying. Those 2 areas, basically every time you bring them back into your fold, they are bringing in new information that will allow you to go up on different tracks. And when you gain that wisdom, which is the term that we're using here, that knowledge becomes wisdom, you get to choose what action you want to make better. For example, do you want to, instead of moving so many tiles at the same time, do you just want to move 2 tiles?
Be more precise, pinpoint with it.
Do you want to move people a little bit more often when they travel in the future?
Or do you want to have the opportunity to shift not only the land, but also the mountains themselves?
And do you want to be extremely destructive? Do you want to erupt multiple volcanoes and also maybe even burn other followers to a crisp?
It's a thing that can happen. Our 5th potential action down here is going to be Journey.
Yep.
Now, Journey is going to allow you to
traverse the land.
Yeah, pretty straightforward. And there's some nuance to that in terms of climbing mountainsides, reaching shrines, but for the most part, it is just the act of population. And then finally...
Oh man, the biggest action of all, or one of the most interesting actions, which is building. So every player starts the game with 3 levels of shrines.
We have a large level 3, a medium level 2, and itty-bitty tiny level 1s.
And the idea is that once a player establishes one of those bases, they can't build their next one.
On a mountainside specifically. So the mix of this game starts with these worker placement locations. Like you said at the very beginning of this description, we're going to get 3 of those. These all work together to have everyone at the table thrust together these landscapes.
And that is critical in this game. Player interaction is in every single pore and second of this journey.
I'll be shifting tiles that might have your workers on them, pulling together mountain ranges, limiting your movement, or potentially opening up doors of opportunity that benefit us both if we're both able to build shrines and climb the mountainside.
And that's also really interesting because you are helping each other in a way, as I was almost getting to.
Or not.
When you build a shrine, you cannot build the next level of your own shrine on top of that base. Another player must come in and finish that shrine for you. So everyone's kind of waiting to see who builds what and when it's my turn to capitalize on that structure. So there's a little bit of, not really cooperation, but you are benefiting. There is a synergy and an inherent value in what you're doing to what I'm going to be doing later.
The main element of this game, I think there's 2 things that are fairly innovative, and then I think there's one main conceit. For me, the biggest part of this game is going to be managing your actions like resources, being precise with what you want to take, where your workers go, how many are on the board, how many are at a study site, how many you're spending to potentially gain wisdom to improve a future action versus immediately getting to a mountainside and starting to construct shrines.
And the second one has to be the highlight of this game, which is this board. This feels like a living thing. It is kinetic, it is constantly in motion, and everybody has a role to play in whatever result or whatever new land or Pangea you are creating together.
It really feels like you're doing one of those sliding puzzle, things, except as a team at the table where everyone's not trying to solve the same picture.
Correct. And that creates this whole level of, I wouldn't even call it chaos. It just creates a really interesting puzzle to solve every time you come in.
It's as if the world is forming. I mean, it really does. I'm a big theme and flavor text person, and you're a big mechanic player. And for me, one of the things that I enjoy so much about this experience so far is that I can see and envision, even in this prototype copy, the land thrusting together, the islands forming, the steam vents bubbling up and revealing new islands, and that hyper emphasize that little idealistic planet is always floating right here, and I'm kind of spinning it in my mind as I play.
And as a mechanical first player, I see that too, and it informs and elevates the entire experience even more so for me.
So, we've talked a lot about what this game's doing.
Yes, we have.
Let's do our last two things here. Favorite thing, least favorite thing. Okay. And then we'll let them decide if they want to go back it on Kicks. You totally should back it on Kicks. But we'll let them make the final decision. Favorite thing, least favorite thing.
So one of my favorite things about this game is the way that the map itself can contract and expand constantly, right? You're able to collapse tiles onto each other, creating new tiles, but every time that you shift things around, you're able to also form new elements. The idea of how those volcanoes can kind of create pathways for you to traverse is really fascinating, and just having everyone's hand in there at the same time creates something that I've never experienced in any game in the multiple years that I've been in this hobby.
Sure.
That is definitely one of my favorites.
Least favorite thing.
I don't know if it's least favorite, but it's definitely something that you have to orient your mind towards.
Okay.
And that is basically that this is high player interaction for what ends up being a medium weight Euro, right? Everything that you are doing and everything that everyone else is doing.
You're costing other players actions.
And that actions is the most important thing of the game. Like
the
usually,
main resource.
This game is going to consist between, I would say, 11 to 15 rounds overall, which is you need to be.
It's about 30 minutes
efficient
per player at the table.
You need to be fairly efficient. You get only 3 actions, and those actions you're constantly shifting things around. So having to spend even one action on something that things just shifted around you is difficult to do.
Well, and for instance, the volcano erupting to remove meeples costs you an action to repopulate them. Shifting a tile away from me costs me an action to either shift it back or chase it down. Erupting a volcano that maybe I wanted to utilize creates land pathways that maybe I didn't need. Merging two mountainsides together where only you are on prevents me from moving into that location. So every action that you're taking is not always purposefully, but sometimes so. But every action that you're taking is butting up right against someone else
as a consequence,
who has their own strategy that isn't yours, believe it or not.
Yep. And so ultimately, I feel that this game will benefit players that are more inventive, that can think quicker on their feet. That is going to be, those are going to be the players that strive in this game.
You'll probably have 2 strategies per game session. But what we've seen is all of those strategies so far in our gameplay have been viable. For me, least favorite thing, I would like more, and this is a prototype, I would like more variability.
On what specifically?
Everything. I like this game so much that I want to see more of it. I want more icons and landscapes and resources. I want more ranges or mountains, and I believe they're working on some things that add in unique type of terrains that could be constructed. I want a bit of asymmetry when it comes to the player powers and the gods that I'm playing with. I know the automata actually have characteristics that are unique to themselves.
Behaviors.
I sort of want the gods that I'm worshiping, the living sun or the raging fire, to have their own little bit of character and flavor. Not all the time and not permanently, but I want to be able to add a little sideboard here that gives me something. Now, because this is a action management game, that is where it becomes a thing where I want it, but I don't know if it would be good for me.
And let's be clear, the game that we have here is already absolutely fantastic.
Well, I was saying my least favorite thing. My least favorite thing is, to some degree, I think around game 8, I think I'd be in a position where I was ready for something more.
Like maybe modules or things you can start adding into the formula.
The nice thing is, around game 8, there's a strong chance that there will be more available to me because it's good enough that it deserves that. My favorite thing about this game, and this is going to surprise you, I guarantee this is going to surprise you, worker placement zones. My favorite thing about this game is the puzzle of constantly solving where your workers are going to be. Because it's not that every zone can only have one.
Yep.
But it's not that you can't reactivate the same one multiple times. It's a matter of always shifting the puzzle, just like you're shifting tiles here. I'm going over with one, moving this one, and then moving that one again.
Yep.
It sets up this turn, but it also needs to be strategic to set up my next turn.
Yep.
I have to be thinking ahead of where I currently am, and I have to be deciding when I unlock more meeples to use, which in a Euro game, in a worker placement game,
You
is
want
usually
that.
the best thing you can do.
Not necessarily here.
In this game, I have to do it at the right moment because I need to be able to put them on the board or else they're going to be in my way and they're going to prevent me from taking actions. For some reason, and I think it's just because the thematics are good enough that they just exist for me, and then I boil it down, this mechanic system I think is unique to this game. I haven't seen... I'm sure there's other games that do it to some degree.
Sure.
But to me, this feels like a unique little puzzle, and I have enjoyed this puzzle almost, if not as much as I've enjoyed every other contained element of this game.
And also, the what makes that even more interesting is that the actions that you're taking are always evolving as the more that you go through the game, through that technology tree that we mentioned already.
So, if you like worker placement, if you like perfect information abstract games, and if you like the idea of the theme, the shifting kind of world building element,
tile displacement,
this could be a good game for you to back on Kickstarter.
It's fantastic. Honestly, you haven't played something like this before.
If you're not into direct player interaction, if you're concerned about limited resource or limited action management and that restriction frustrates you, or you really don't get spatial puzzles all that well.
That's a good one too.
I'm not sure that this would be quite the right game for you. And I've already openly said, it's a really good game.
It's fantastic.
Now the question is, how many of them should get it?
All of them.
No. There's at least one person that doesn't like player interaction.
Okay, sure. That one person, but everyone else.
You know who I'm talking about, who doesn't enjoy spatial puzzles. It's probably not right for them.
Yeah,
right?
no, 100%.
Well, and then you have you, who just doesn't like playing games with me. So at least 3 of them shouldn't get it. But everyone else, maybe it's worthwhile.
So with all that said, thank you so very much for getting to this point. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing, liking,
we already said that
doing all the things.
No, most of the things.
Regardless,
it'd be horrific if they did all the things.
Regardless of what you do,
Dear God, whatever
remember
you're thinking,
to do the important thing.
That. Whatever
get out
you're doing,
or get in.
No. Put it down right
and
now.
Play some games.
Oh God, they did it.
We'll see you guys next time.
Oh, they did it.